to expel, remove, or separate an entity from a person, object, or area that is possessed. That is the goal of exorcisms, a religious or spiritual practice carried out for centuries against an evil force. For example, in the Christian religion, the act dates back to biblical stories where Jesus appears, who not only expelled demons but also exhorted his disciples to do so in the name of God. But in itself, how does it work or develop? Obviously, something or someone possessed is needed, but equally, an exorcist is required. That is, a person who is often a member of the Christian church and who is considered to have received a gift from a higher power to cast out evil spirits. So, does a possessed human being or object have the chance to go back to how it was before? In theory, one could say yes, because the possessed person or object does not have control over their actions and therefore acts involuntarily. Who is behind all of this? Well, it's the supposed demon that seeks to cause harm. So once it's gone, the person or object would presumably have the ability to return to normal. That's why many families who believe a loved one has been possessed by an entity seek the help of an exorcist to recover them. At that point is when things either go extremely well or extremely wrong.
Huh? New? Normal? Why?
Aurelie Naomi Proctor Hernandez, just 3 years old, began to exhibit strange behavior in September 2021, according to her own mother, Claudia Hernandez, who is 26. Allegedly, things would get worse at night with screams, crying, and behaviors that were out of the ordinary. According to the woman, the little girl didn't seem to be herself, as she had empty eyes and her voice was unusually deep. It was then that she thought, being so involved with the church, her daughter had been possessed by a demon. Claudia sought assistance from her brother, Rene Aaron Hernandez Santos, 15, and her father, Rene Trigueros Hernandez, 59. The latter, in fact, who was a pastor of the Apostles and Prophets Church located right in the center of the North American city of San Jose, California. Although initially the woman tried to expel the evil spirit from her descendant's body on her own. How? By inducing vomiting, by putting a couple of fingers down his throat. Remember, she was once a baby, a little girl? However, because he didn't succeed, he now called Hernandez Santos to pray with her. They spent the whole night making pleas to God, but the girl just didn't get better. She continued with the alleged symptoms. So when morning came, they got in touch with Trigueros Hernandez to go to the temple for a prayer ceremony around 7 in the morning. However, the brothers didn't leave the house where they were until the girl stopped crying and fell exhausted from fatigue. Once they arrived at the church, apostles and prophets were in prayer until 12 noon, which was when things started to get out of control. The reason father and kin decided to expel the demon once and for all from the bodies of Aurelie and Naomi. Among the three of them, they forcefully took her and sat her in a chair, to which the little girl allegedly tried to free herself with supposedly superhuman strength and at times lifting her feet off the ground. But even so, none of them let her go, and they continued with what could already be said was being a exorcism or crime. "I love you" were the words that the girl supposedly pronounced in a moment of clarity. Subsequently, Aurelie vomited and her family laid her on the ground. It was then when, suddenly, the young girl's breathing started to slow down until she sadly stopped breathing. Claudia already knew it. Her daughter had left. At least that's what God had presumably made her know. By 6 in the evening of that 24th of September of the year 2021, the little girl's body was cold and her lips were blue. Even so, they waited until 8 in the evening to call the 911 emergency services and report what had happened. Once the police arrived, those involved recounted what had previously happened, while the paramedics could do nothing to save the life of the young girl who was declared dead as soon as they arrived. Presence. Do you believe you caused your daughter's death? That's what the officers asked Claudia, who responded in a certain way. When asked if she had consumed any substance or narcotic, she assured that she had not and that she also did not have a diagnosis for a mental illness or anything similar. At that moment, only the woman, her brother, and her father were stopped for questioning, as it was not yet entirely clear what had happened and the degree of responsibility each had in the minor's death. I spoke with God for 3 weeks. He told me he would take Annalise. This is what Claudia said. And why would he take her? That was how the uniformed officers reacted to what the woman mentioned, who answered that because she was never meant to be his mother, something she had never revealed until the interrogation. And how do you feel about that? Claudia was finally questioned. I've learned to accept what is. That's what this woman claimed. Then it was Rene Aron Hernandez Santos's turn. He pointed out that he had an ordinary life, with the only difference being that he liked to attend church regularly and that he had gifts from God, so he could perceive that Areli was not the same and that she was indeed possessed, just as her sister had said. Among some of the gifts he mentioned, he had the ability to speak and interpret languages, heal the sick, see visions, and reprimand, although he confessed that he didn't see the gift of healing as clearly after his niece's death, of which he certainly revealed he had a degree of complicity by hugging her extremely hard, but that was what the Lord was supposedly asking him at those moments, and by the Lord I mean this person's God. And in the end, he commented that after feeling guilty for the death of Proctor Hernandez, he stopped attending church regularly. But after a while, he ended up returning and became a preacher. But that's not the only thing, because finally it was Rene Trigueros Hernandez's turn. Although he spoke little, he noted he always listened to Claudia due to her special link with God, and that something where Areli was involved could not be the exception. But with this, now yes, let's go to the analysis results. The truth. The autopsy on the little one revealed she was full of injuries, including inflammation in the brain, blood in the lungs, marks on the neck, and injuries inside the mouth. And the forensic medical examinations put a combination of suffocation and mechanical asphyxia as the cause of this little girl no longer being with us. The above was attributed to Claudia sticking a couple of fingers down her daughter's throat to induce vomiting, and she, being in a position that made it hard for her to breathe, ended up dying. As a result, Claudia Hernandez was arrested in January of the year 2022, while Rene Trigueros Hernandez and Rene Aron Hernandez Santos were detained on May 11th of the same year. Before her arrest, the woman shared a series of videos on YouTube recounting her experiences prior to the birth of Areli and Naomi. Now, she also shared that, initially not wanting a baby, she eventually decided to have one. But what shocked the most was that she dared to talk about what happened with her daughter that fateful September 24th of the year 2021. She emphasized over and over again that only the people who were there know what really happened. The truth is that to this date, all three remain detained in Santa Clara County jails in California without the right to bail. It is expected that the next May 10th of the year 2024, they will return to a court where the judge will announce his ruling to determine if the district attorney has enough evidence for the case to proceed to trial. Both Claudia and her brother and father pleaded not guilty in the first instance of assaulting a minor of 8 years old, causing him to pass a better life for which they were obviously accused. Despite this, the following text written by Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Wise appeared in court documents. Over the course of approximately 20 hours, Arlie Proctor fought for her life while three trusted adults forcefully held her by the neck. As the assault continued, the girl fought to escape her abusers and repeatedly said no, followed by an "I love you" before losing her life.
But these are not all the cases.
Just like what happened to Arlie, many have been the victims of failed exorcism attempts, as I was telling you at the beginning. Perhaps more than what is recorded, as we have to consider that the advent of the internet could have brought many stories to light. However, of those that exist, there are some that even have videos and photographs, as they wanted to have a record in case the situation got complicated or went well. Records which we are going to talk about next.
No.
If one has to consider almost entirely documented exorcisms, it's impossible to ignore that of Annalise Michel. Born on the 21st of September in the year 52 in West Germany, she was raised in a strictly Catholic family. Strictly because for Annalise's mother there was nothing more important than faith and the belief in a higher power that was taking care of each and every one of her children. So the German woman was educated to be a very devout person, but also a kind person. In addition, very passionate in her studies. So, as she grew up, Michelle did not hesitate and always went in search of a better future, both for herself and for her parents. This is because her parents were not very wealthy people, as they were dedicated to a small farm they owned. Perhaps that's why they put everything into raising the young girl. They wanted her to have a much better life than they did. However, before entering university, Annalise began to have health problems. This led her to develop severe epilepsy attacks. That is, those that range from loss of consciousness to convulsions, symptoms, motor, sensory, visual, or psychic, which unfortunately began to be not only more frequent but also increasingly stronger. That was in the year 69 when Michelle was just 17 years old. So her parents had no choice but to admit her to a psychiatric hospital at the recommendation of specialists who had already detected a mental illness. She was there for a few months until she was discharged and returned to her life, presumably already cured. She finished high school and managed to join the university, where she even enrolled around the year 73, which brought her closer to fulfilling her dream of helping her parents get ahead through her studies. However, even though the doctors at the psychiatric hospital where she had been admitted told her she had nothing to worry about, the problems related to epilepsy continued. They were not as strong as before, but they still continued to torment her and did not leave her in peace, so she started treatment again, which led her to fall into a deep depression. She tried by all means, especially through the church, to move forward, but despite her efforts, as I tell you, she did not succeed. It was then that she thought perhaps it was not actually a disease or mental suffering, rather it was an evil spirit that did not leave her in peace. Why? Because of her devotion to God and her dream, because of her fanaticism. It was more than clear to her that something was preventing her from being happy and living fully, and when she mentioned it to her parents, they believed the same. They found meaning in everything she had experienced. From that moment on, the German woman began to see strange things, like grotesque faces in the darkness or terror in people, and although she made prayers or requests to the Lord to stop these apparitions or visions, they simply did not do so. So she thought the best thing was to go to the church to ask for a full-fledged exorcism. However, her request was rejected on more than one occasion, most likely because it was reviewed in her history that she had been hospitalized for mental problems among other things. Then by the end of 1973, she had no choice but to turn again to specialists who recommended arbamazepine, an anti-epileptic medication, something that did not help her, but she continued to take until she met a man named Louis Alt, who was this character, a parish priest with some prestige in terms of exorcisms and who believed Michel was possessed, as she said. Another fanaticism. Louis went to talk to the young woman's peers and explained to them that the church could not perform the exorcism in addition to the medical history because Annalise did not present certain conditions such as speaking in other tongues, superhuman strength, or aberrations to religious images. A conversation that the couple decided to share with their daughter. What's curious is that after that talk, the girl began to show the previously mentioned conditions. Was it the power of human suggestion?
I'm asking you.
It was debated for a long time, but no conclusion was reached. The truth is, he'd done it previously. When she told her parents that she thought an evil entity was pursuing her, they believed her and she began to see extraordinary things. Now, with all the evidence that Michel was being possessed by a demon, the priest went to the church and after insisting and insisting, he got the authorization to perform an exorcism. About 10 hours had passed and it was not yet over. Louis didn't understand what was happening until Annalise's parents told him that she was taking epilepsy medication that might be affecting the act. So the man ordered that her treatment be suspended, at least until the whole process was over. Of course, it was believed that at most it would be a couple of sessions, but it extended for almost an entire year. Fortunately, each and everyone was captured with photographs, audio, and video. The deterioration that the German woman was suffering month after month could be seen all too clearly.
Thank you.
And of course, she could be seen making disturbing gestures, very deep voices, or struggling to break free against several people, disputes for which she presented injuries in most parts of her body.
What is that?
In addition to often cutting herself with objects in self-flagellation, biting her nails, among other types of acts of this kind. To give you an idea, she even had fractured knees from genuflection attacks, the gesture known in the church as bending the knee to the ground with the torso upright when passing in front of the Bible or an object of value related to God. It is said that she used to do it up to 600 times a day.
Other things she did that were out of the ordinary, let's say.
Things she did that were out of the ordinary, let's say.
She would scream for hours, bark like a dog, hide under the table, eat spiders and coal, as well as lick her own urine and climb the walls. The latter was only mentioned by those who were present at the sessions, as it was not recorded on video. But who or what was possessing this girl? According to the father's recordings, there were 6 different demons, each with a name. Finally, Michel couldn't take it anymore and sadly ended up losing her life on July 1st of the year 76 at only 23 years of age. In total, it was revealed that there would have been 67 exorcisms that she had to face, each with an average of 4 hours. At the time of her death, she was seriously ill. She had pneumonia, which had been added to her anemia. But it didn't end there, as it was decided to prosecute everyone who was involved with the exorcism. On one hand, both Michel's parents and the parish priest. A trial that became quite controversial and at the same time media-focused due to everything previously mentioned. The official cause of Annalise's death, according to the autopsy, was due to malnutrition and dehydration. And although the defense of the accused tried to use the 51 audio records, they were not allowed to. Therefore, without much in their favor, they were sentenced to 6 months behind bars for negligent homicide, a sentence that was changed for the payment of a bail and 3 years of probation. Luckily, the case set a precedent. Currently, before an exorcism, it is required that a doctor endorse it or even be present at the time it occurs. Annalise Michel, for her part, has not been forgotten. Hundreds and hundreds of people visit her annually at the cemetery. But on the other hand, what Annalise's mother said 40 years after what happened was the following. I know we did the right thing because I saw the wounds of Christ in her hands. She bore stigmata, and that was a sign from God that we had to exorcise the demons. She died to save other lost souls, to atone for their sins. But this is where I ask you, could this be a mental illness, religious fanaticism, or both? Or did these people really have a demon inside? You tell me in the comments. Similarly, just as there are cases that went extremely wrong, there are also those that are successful. Not everything is bad in this life. That is, those where a person managed to be freed from evil, which tormented them without major consequences, only with a bad experience. And one of the fathers who has the most stories to tell is Vincenzo Taraborelli, allegedly of Italian origin and over 80 years old. Similarly, what little is known is thanks to Taraborelli himself, as according to him, he started by chance in exorcisms. Although that's not true because he likes to believe that it was God himself who guided him on that path to free the captives and cast out demons. Because once a fellow priest asked him for help during one of his acts of liberation. But as he was young and just starting on the path of the Lord, he knew little to nothing. Fortunately, he came out well along with his colleague, and from that moment, he did not stop participating in exorcisms. Although, of course, he was preparing more and more to be able to do his job better. All this started when he reached a point where he became one of the most recognized and requested exorcists of the Vatican, that is, not only from Rome, but from the Catholic Church in general, sometimes attending up to 30 people per day. However, to be sure not to make a mistake, he always exhorts those allegedly possessed before anything else to visit a psychiatrist or specialist. Thus, once he has the opinion of the same, he gets to work. With prayer and unshakable faith, he has cast out dozens of demons from people's bodies. Something that can sometimes be seen like when a person vomited pins, stones, wood, and hair in front of him. There's no doubt that it's a controversial topic that more than one person may doubt its truthfulness, but that's something related to each person's beliefs or faith, so everyone should make their own judgment. Not only from what is shown throughout this video, but from what happens day by day in relation to religion, good and evil. But if you like this type of crime, mystery, or paranormal videos, remember that the Much More Mysteries podcast is on Spotify every Thursday. And all audio platforms.
On Facebook and YouTube, I do this with my partner, Edson.